Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, John and Lee proudly present the greatest wrestling show ever!
All right, guys, we're not messing about today. I've got to do a school run unexpectedly in about 20 minutes, and this match is about 20 minutes long. So, with SummerSlam 1994, August the 29th, we are 30 minutes and 35 seconds in, just before the start of the Diesel versus Razor Ramon match, and we're going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. So, before we get started, Lee, do you notice anything different about me today? Yeah? Have a look.
Different. You got two headphones in or something?
Yeah. So I was going to reference him as our friend. How do you describe Jamie? Acquaintance? Some guy we're aware of the existence of? So Jamie pretends not to be a big fan of the show, but he clearly has been listening because he's been commenting on the audio levels and saying that Lee isn't as audible as he could be, which Lee correctly pointed out was down to me not wearing headphones, despite him mentioning it several times. I ignored him, to be honest. But because James mentioned it, I've now got earphones in. So as you correctly pointed out, I've got different sets of earphones in. I've got one that's going to my phone, which SummerSlam 94 is playing on. The other one is going to my laptop, so I can hear you. So Jamie, if you're listening to this, I hope that's better. Go on, Lee, say something funny, Lee, so Jamie can hear you.
Hi, Jamie.
Wait, you acknowledge his existence. That's more than you could have done. So you should be thankful for that alone. So, SummerSlam 94, we've got Diesel as Intercontinental Champion here, coming out to defend against Razor, who he beat for the title in a house show in, I think it was Rochester, New York, back in April. 1994 is very much the year of ascendancy of Diesel. He starts the year as Shawn Michaels' bodyguard, and if you'd have said to most people by the end of the year, he'll be a former tag and Intercontinental champ and the world champ starting a year-long reign, I think a lot of people would have questioned your sanity at that point. They had a strong showing at the Rumble, eliminated a number of people, I forget how many, and then had to be eliminated by several people together. So they really put him over strong then. Still only Shawn's bodyguard at WrestleMania in the famous ladder match against Razor, but definitely people were starting to react to him at that point. And over the rest of this year, I mean, as you can see there, his act's transformed. A year earlier, is Vinny Vegas in WCW in big Dayglow pink trousers. Here he looks like a bona fide main eventer, doesn't he?
Yeah, so he's Kevin Two Belts here, is he?
He is Kevin Two Belts. That doesn't quite work, does it? What Kevin Nashy Two Belts, something like that?
Diesel Double Belts?
Diesel Double Belts, I like it. Because at that point, of course, he's not Kevin. He's just Diesel, isn't he? Big Daddy Cool Diesel, if you will.
Yeah, because I've written down here Scott Hall versus Kevin Nash, where
it's not though, is it?
Versus Diesel.
It's probably a good job that I told you which one this was, because you could have made the error of getting fake Razor Ramon versus fake Diesel. Have you heard about that? So in 1996, Hall and Nash go to WCW to create the NWO, and they're known as the Outsiders under their real names of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. A few months later, Jim Ross, who at that point is just a commentator on Raw, but is also working backstage, I think he's head of talent relations, announces that Razor Ramon and Diesel are coming back to WWF. And everyone's like, right, okay, that's weird. It seems to be in the contract in WCW. Apparently they get a hefty pay rise in WCW tied into a longer term contract. And then a couple of weeks later, Jim Ross walks out with two different guys playing the characters of Razor Ramon and Diesel. So they didn't look dissimilar. They did a fairly good job. Fake Razor was played by a guy who mainly wrestled as Big Titan in Japan. Rick Bogner was his real name. He died fairly recently, actually, only maybe 6 or 12 months ago. Fake Diesel was played by Glenn Jacobs, who went on to find greater fame as who?
I feel like I know the name.
He's a mayor nowadays, if that helps.
He's a mayor?
Yeah, Kane.
Oh, a mayor.
Mayor, yeah. He's not a horse. He's not, no. That would be quite an evolution of character to go from fake Diesel to a horse. No, so fake Diesel was played by Glenn Jacobs, who'd previously been Isaac Yankem DDS, Jerry Lawler's dentist in a feud with Bret Hart. So he'd been saddled with two pretty crappy gimmicks there, but they stuck with him. And a year or so after that, he was repackaged as Kane, who has been for approaching a quarter of a century now.
Yeah, we mentioned him a few weeks.
We did, yeah. So Razor here is accompanied by William the Refrigerator Perry, who played American football. That's all I know about him. Do you know anything about American football?
No, but is he the fridge? Is he the fridge?
I
You
think
know,
that's, or have I got the wrong one? Maybe it's not. Maybe that
I
was
remember the
someone.
from American football called the fridge appearing in a previous event.
Yeah, he was in the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2. I may have actually got the wrong one. Let me see if I can find actually. I'm on the SummerSlam. It's not, I've lied to you. It's NFL Hall of Famer Walter Payton. I should have known
Right.
that, shouldn't I? If Jamie is listening, because Jamie likes American football, he'll be furious, won't he?
You mean?
Not, not that he'll be watching the pay-per-view at the same time, but anyway. It's all right, they're off now. They're off. Two big lads here, aren't they? Big
Do you
guys.
know what? That same thing. Both very tall.
Well, I think this was around the time where obviously the steroid scandal was pretty much. I think Vince had maybe been acquitted in July of '94, so only a month before this had the steroid scandal like essentially come to an end. So he was in the midst of pushing a number of larger guys, but not larger in the way that the likes of Hulk Hogan were several years before. You've got Razor and even more so Diesel here are particularly tall. You've got Yokozuna who's just big and fat, but they've found big guys who aren't particularly steroid enhanced
Yeah.
to form
You
the
know how
face of the
tall
new
they are?
generation. How tall is Nash? I think he's 6'10", I think his build is 7 foot, but I think he's 6'10" legit. I
Standard,
think
isn't it? So
exactly, yeah. It's like how you say you're 6'3". And I think Razor's something like 6'6", 6'7". So still, big guy by any conventional standard, but just not as big.
So,
So
want to have a crack at some cage match stats?
I do, yeah, very much so.
Go for first then.
Which one? Go for Diesel first.
All right. So, what do you reckon his rating is out of 10?
It won't be particularly high because he's had a handful of good matches, but generally been carried by Sean and Brett and the like. So maybe like 6.5.
7.2.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
And can you guess his 4 alter egos other than Diesel?
Other than Diesel, well, Kevin Nash,
5. 5 actually. Kevin Nash.
Oz.
Yeah.
When he was billed as Oz, he came from the Emerald City, so he came from the capital of himself, which doesn't make any sense. He was one half of the Master Blasters. I can't remember what he was called. Master Blaster Blade or something like that.
Steel. I'll give you that.
Steel. Oh, that's close there. Vinny Vegas, I mentioned before. And have I still got one more then? So it's not a nickname like Big Daddy Cool, it's a separate gimmick.
Correct.
So it's presumably in WCW before he became a Master Blaster or Oz. No, pass.
Dr. X.
Okay, I don't think I'd even heard of that. So was that? Does it say if that was in WCW or was that somewhere else?
I'll find out for you. Sorry.
So Diesel sent Razor off there. He's got him in a sleeper hold. Both men looking like absolute stars there. Scott Hall's got to be one of the biggest stars never to make it to world title level. It's generally him and Mr. Perfect. They're often held up as maybe Ted DiBiase as well, the few big stars to never quite make that last step.
A quick one. Looks like it's a TNA thing.
Say again, sorry.
Looks like it's a TNA thing.
Right, okay. So that was later on in the mid-noughties, presumably.
Yeah, it must be.
So Kevin Nash is quite a funny guy, and he did a series of skits with the cruiserweights, or the X division as they're known in TNA, in around 2008 or so, which are definitely worth checking out. I remember him drawing this one graph. So Diesel's reign as world champion is commonly accepted to be the least successful one from a purely gate drawing perspective. During this year, when he's the champion, WWEF draw the least they ever have. So not necessarily all Nash's fault, but he's generally accepted as being the least successful champion from that respect. And in one of these TNA skits, I remember him drawing this graph showing what a draw was. So like a Hogan blips, goes up in like at 88, and then Savage is a little bit lower in 89, and then it gets to 94 Diesel, and it's literally off the top of the chart. And the X Division guys are like, I don't get it, Kevin. I thought you were the least successful champion ever. And it's like, well, that's what some figures would say. He's a funny guy,
Funny.
Nash. I like Nash as well because he was one of the first wrestlers to freely admit that essentially he was in it for the money. You know, he enjoyed wrestling, but he did it to get paid, which is fine, and he knew his value in the business. And he was honest about that, whereas a lot of the others would claim purely to do it for the love of it, which I know is part of their reason, but would then also negotiate higher contracts. He was quite open and honest about the fact that it was a business and he was a professional.
Fair play to the guy. So who do you reckon his top 5 most fought opponents are?
Right. I mean, he was only in WWF for 2 years, so I'm
This
tempted.
is over his career, by the way.
Yeah. So overall, he was in WCW for longer. He was in WCW from mid '96. I think he was still around when they were brought out. So you've got 4.5 to 5 years there, plus a couple of years before that. So realistically, I'm thinking it's probably someone from there. So maybe Sting.
No.
Um,
The way,
hmm.
I think the way you're looking at it is correct, though, looking at these names.
Lex Luger.
There's number 2. I should mention number 1. I've not heard of this guy.
Not heard of him. Goodness me. So it could
Find
possibly
out
be
who.
someone from TNA then instead in the mid noughties. Who was? Oh, Sean's about to get sent to the back, I think, by Earl Hebner or Dave Hebner, or whoever that is. Okay. TNA wrestle Kevin Nash. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to pass. Not Scott Hall, presumably.
Scott Hall. No.
No, I don't think he'd be quite in there.
I'm just trying to find out who this guy is.
Something like Scott or Rick Steiner, or
Number 5. Sorry. Scott Hall was number 4. Sorry.
okay, and Scott Steiner number 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had a lot of tag matches against the Steiners over the years, so I figured he might be there or thereabouts. That's given me 3 out of the 5. I'm happy with that. What's
All right.
what's
Number 3 was Double J Jeff Jarrett.
okay? Fair enough. Yeah, okay, because they would have been in both companies for a number of years there. Yeah, okay.
Oh, of course, that's who he is. Sorry, number 1 is Giant, who I know as Big Show.
Okay, so he's faced the Big Show the most times. Have you ever seen Nash's attempt to powerbomb the Giant?
Nash, no.
So he does powerbomb him successfully in, I want to say maybe 1997, something like that. But then they're wrestling each other at, I think it's sold out 98, so the January 98 pay-per-view. I think it's a tag match, fairly sure it's Hall and Nash versus Giant and possibly Luger. And for the finish, Nash goes for the powerbomb of the Giant, but he's gained about 50 pounds since he last did it. And it does not go well. Giant gets about halfway over and then just gets dropped on the back of his head. And he's a big guy to be dropped on the back of his head. Like, it's the sort of thing that it was fine, but an inch more one way and it would have probably broken his neck.
Wow. All right,
Right.
so Scott Hall has a rating on Cage Match of 8.55 out of 10, which I think heroes would be surprised by.
It's a little bit higher than I thought it might be, to be honest, because again, he's got a relatively short window of having really quality matches. You know, he had a few really good ones in WWF, but I'd struggle to name
Well,
any particularly great ones in WCW.
I think the thing is with wrestlers like him is when you do think on you instantly think of the really good matches he was involved in.
Yeah,
So
they're the 2 ladder matches and the like. So yeah, 8.5. And then if you're going to ask me to guess his most frequent opponents, maybe Shawn Michaels.
the 2.
Yeah, because I thought around that time they'd had a lot of untelevised matches as well. I know they were testing out the ladder match for a number of weeks before WrestleMania 10 and had a number of other house show runs after that. And then I'm guessing people in WCW, so maybe the likes of Sting, Luger, the Giant.
Well, Luger out of those
Yeah.
3.
Steiner,
No,
DDP,
no.
not Brett. I wouldn't have thought he faced Brett all that many times. I can think of a couple off the top of my head. No, pass.
So number 5 was IRS.
Wow. Okay, fair enough.
Back to under, is it?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
4 Diesel.
Okay, yeah.
And number 1, again, Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay. They get a similar sort of thing, I suppose. There's a number of years where they were both in the same promotion and probably on the opposite side of the old heel face divide, but that's interesting.
And
Razor's got the classic abdominal stretch on Diesel now. Diesel's selling it big time.
here is Razor Ramon. So do you want to give me his other 4 alter egos that I've got written down?
So obviously we've got Scott Hall, we've got Vinny Vega, not Vinny, sorry, that's Nash, isn't it? Diamond Stud, Spaceship Coyote.
Starship Coyote.
Starship Coyote, yeah, that was a tag team in the AWA. He was AWA Tag Team Champion with Mr. Perfect, funnily enough, actually. Magnum Scott Hall.
I've not got that.
Yeah, because when he had the longer hair and the moustache, he had a vague look of Magnum PI. So he was billed as Magnum Scott Hall, I'm sure he was. Completely made that up, but... I think he was Scott Hall from 96 onwards, so we're looking probably something else in WCW or AWA. No, pass.
See if we can get some information.
Dog's getting excited. Okay, Slugfest now. Razor's backing Diesel up into the corners, going for an Irish whip. I thought Sean was about to be ejected a minute ago, but actually I've remembered now he's involved in the finish.
So he was part of a wrestling stable that was led by Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, that was when he was the Diamond Stud, wasn't it?
Oh, did you say Diamond Stud?
I did say the Diamond Stud, yes. I think that's probably the first one I said.
That was Texas Scott.
Texas Scott. Razor with the bulldog off the rope there. Do you know what Razor commonly backstage called his fall-away slam? So it's the move where you lift someone up for a slam and then you lean backwards and throw them over your head. Do you know what he called that backstage?
No.
The sack of shit. Famously said by Dean Shane Douglas. Shane Douglas, most well known from his stint in ECW, came into WWF mid to late 1995 as Dean Douglas, a teacher, because he had been a teacher in real life in the past, and was essentially buried by the Clique, Diesel, Razor, Shawn, 1, 2, 3 Kid, etc. And when he was being interviewed afterwards, numerous times over the years, he commonly said that he didn't like Scott Hall for numerous reasons, but one of them was his contempt for the people that he often wrestled, including referring to them as a sack of shit when he'd throw them over his head.
Brilliant.
But then Shane Douglas, I think, had his own reasons for not liking those guys.
Razor's Edge is a great move to recreating a swimming pool.
It was my finisher for many years, the sit-out Razor's Edge. So the Midnight Express, the first version of it, was a Razor's Edge, but into a sit-out powerbomb like Roman Reigns does sometimes.
Oh, to sort of get them up behind and then bring them...
Push them over, and then as they go over, you sit out into a sit-out powerbomb. It was a great move. It was a great move until I started working for All Star and no one wanted to take it. That's when I started doing the RKO instead. Right, Sean's got the belt there. So as you correctly pointed out, it's Diesel double belts. So they beat the Head Shrinkers for the tag titles the previous night on a house show. So all 3 of Diesel's title wins this year come from non-televised events. The Intercontinental title earlier in... Oh, Sean's going after the super kick. He's ducked. Diesel's taking it. There we go. This is the finish. He beats Razor for the Intercontinental title in April in an untelevised event. They beat the Head Shrinkers the night before SummerSlam in an untelevised event, and then the 3 nights after Survivor Series later in this year, he beats Bob Backlund in 8 seconds for the world title. It was filmed, but a non-televised event. That's interesting. Walter Payton chasing Shawn Michaels off there. The ref's going to slide in and make the count, because this is obviously building the dissension between Shawn and Razor, because at Survivor Series, that's when they finally go their separate ways, then vacating the tag titles to prepare Diesel. There we go. Game over. To prepare Diesel for his ascension to the main event, beating Backlund, like I said, 3 days later, a house show at MSG.
Does this in any way lead to any upset between Shawn and Diesel?
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, so they're building towards that. So I think there've been
Oh,
bits of tension here and there. Obviously, Sean just cost him the Intercontinental title. I feel it just continued to build over the next few months and they'd make amends. But then at Survivor Series, if I remember correctly, Sean again accidentally super kicks Diesel. I can see Diesel's angry now. He's following Sean to the back with an angry look on his face. Yeah,
yeah,
Survivor Series, Sean accidentally super kicks him. But I seem to remember the one at Survivor Series looked a bit more like it might have been an accident. It might not have been.
yeah. It never ceases to amaze me how often somebody helping out would then accidentally put out the person that they're helping,
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
and Diesel
He
see
he looks
that.
a bit. He looks the business with the belt there, Razor, doesn't he? Definitely suited him.
Yeah, it does.
Not sure, although he's commonly given as a person that didn't, that could have made it to world title level that didn't. I don't know if he'd look quite right with the world title belt, but then maybe that's just me kind of knowing what happens 25 years onwards. I'm sure he would have been a perfectly fine world champion. Right, so that is that match. Now, what have we got left for next week? I'm trying to think who we've still got in our selection of people. Let me have a quick
Or
look.
we've got Sting, Edge, Chris Jericho, and Goldberg.
Is that all we got left?
Yeah,
Sting, Edge, Jericho, Goldberg. So Sting and Goldberg would work together. I'm sure they've got something we could use. So we've then got Edge and who was the other one?
Jericho, and haven't they famously never faced?
Well, Edge and Jericho have never faced each other. They definitely have. They wrestled for the world title at the WrestleMania I went to, WrestleMania 26 in 2010. So I reckon we could do Edge Jericho from WrestleMania 26, and I'm sure we can find a Sting Goldberg. That's going to work.
Is it someone that's is it a Sting and Jericho never fought? Maybe.
Probably not, yeah, because they were in WCW briefly in the late 90s together, but not really at the same level at that point.
Oh,
I think that's our safest bet. I can guarantee we've got Edge Jericho because I was there watching it. And I'm fairly confident there's Sting Goldberg, even if it's in a tag match or something like that.
Yeah, there was a combination of these two. I remember reading where people were calling for the dream match that never happened. They must have been
Famously, Jericho didn't face Goldberg. They shot an angle between them in about '98 that Jericho was hoping was going to help propel him towards the main event scene, but it didn't go anywhere after Goldberg said he didn't want to work with someone so small. So it might have been you read something along those lines. Yeah,
right. So we do.
let's Edge Jericho next week and then finish off with Sting Goldberg, even if it has to be some other version like a tag match or something.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, guys, hope you enjoyed that. See you next week. Jamie, I hope the sound was better for you.